let's talk about what happens when a huge, critical project just stops. We're diving into the story of Nepal's Narayanghat Butwal Road, a highway that's a vital artery for the country's economy, but it's been hit with unbelievable delays. We're going to unpack a detailed study that looked into exactly what went wrong and why this road is still nowhere near finished.
First off, just get a load of this timeline. This project was supposed to be wrapped up by August 2022. Okay, nope. Pushed a whole year. Then, pushed another year. Now the goal is July 2025. I mean, that's a full 3 years late. This isn't just a simple delay, it's become a never-ending story.
And here's the number that really tells you everything. After more than 4 years, 52 months of work, they'd only finished about a third of the road. 1/3. So that brings us to the big question we're tackling today. How on earth did a project this important get so completely derailed?
All right, to get to the bottom of this, the research really zoomed in on the three main groups involved. You've got the client, which is the government, then you've got the contractor, the company actually building the road, and finally, the consultant, the firm that was hired to oversee the whole thing. Let's see who dropped the ball where.
And what the study found is that, well, there was plenty of blame to go around. On the government side, you see all the classic problems, right? Handing over the construction site late, taking forever to make decisions, and not paying the contractor on time. But hey, the contractor was far from perfect. The study points out they came in with a totally unrealistic schedule, ran into money troubles, and struggled with just plain bad management and even shoddy work.
And then we have the consultant. You know, the watchdog who's supposed to make sure everything is up to snuff? Well, it turns out they were a huge part of the problem. They were slow to approve changes, their design documents had errors, and they didn't have enough experienced people on the ground to solve problems. So, bottom line, nobody here had clean hands.
But it wasn't just about the mistakes these main players were making. The project also got hammered by a bunch of external problems, things that were, for the most part, totally out of their control. So first, of course, the COVID-19 pandemic threw a massive wrench in the works, messing with labor and supplies. But then, look at all this other stuff. They couldn't get utility companies to move power lines and cables in time. Other government departments, like the forestry department, caused their own delays. And as if that wasn't enough, they got hit with bad weather and transportation problems. It was just a perfect storm of trouble.
Now, with so many things going wrong, you would think that communication would be priority number one, right? Well, the research found a huge fundamental disconnect right at the heart of the whole project.
And this is pretty interesting. The analysis showed that the two teams that were actually on the ground, the contractor building the road and the consultant watching over them, they actually worked together pretty well. They had a strong connection, they were talking, and they were solving day-to-day problems together.
But here's the catch. The client, the government, was the weak link in the chain. The data showed their relationship with the other two was way weaker. It's like they were disconnected from what was actually happening on site every day, focusing more on the paperwork and the budget from afar instead of being in the loop. And that disconnect, it had massive consequences.
And here's the scary part. All those failures from the past haven't just vanished. Nope. They've created a whole new wave of risks that are now threatening to sink the project for good. These delays are causing a really dangerous ripple effect.
And the number one, biggest, baddest risk that the study identified? A gigantic increase in the project's total cost. Every single day of delay costs more money for people, for materials, for everything. This has become the single greatest threat to this road ever getting finished.
The study basically groups these future problems into three main danger zones. First, escalating costs. Think budget blowouts and skyrocketing prices. Second, poor planning. There's so much pressure now to just finish that it could lead to rush jobs and more mistakes. And third, economic uncertainty. If the country's economy struggles, the money could dry up and the contractor might just lose all faith and walk away.
And there's a quote from the research that just hits the nail on the head. It says that while delays like this are often seen as normal in developing countries, they cause huge financial losses for everybody. In other words, just because it's common doesn't mean it isn't incredibly damaging.
So, when you boil it all down, what's the final verdict here? The mess on the Narayanghat Butwal Road wasn't just one person's or one company's fault. It was a total system failure. A failure in planning from day one, a failure in communication between the key players, and a failure to coordinate with everyone else.
At the end of the day, this highway is more than just a story about pavement and bridges. It's a wake-up call about complexity, and it forces us to ask a much, much bigger question. As we try to build these massive, complicated projects for our future,